welcome to this latest LP Brussels interview with leaders from the world of politics, business and the community. It's an absolute pleasure that on this programme today we welcome Gillian Merron. Gillian's the Chief Executive Officer of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. Welcome to you, Gillian.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, it's been a very tough and challenging year for us all, and I'm sure that's true, of course, of the Jewish community in the United Kingdom, but also globally too. What are the current priorities you're working on at the board?
Well, for us, obviously, coronavirus, tackling the impact, and I'm sure we'll come on to that in respect of the Jewish community, that's all pervasive. And obviously for us also, the whole issue of anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish hatred remains big. And particularly now we have to be very aware of that on social media. I think that's an area of big work for us. And again, for all of us, and we've got our own response on the issue of anti-Black racism following the appalling murder of George Floyd in America, to name just three things. Yeah,
well, indeed. I mean, it's a daunting and challenging time, and by the sound of it, particularly for the Jewish community in the UK. I mean, if I could perhaps begin with the anti-Semitism issue, Gillian, if I may. I mean, I think for many of us, it's hard to believe in this modern era in 2020 that there is still anti-Semitism rife in countries like the United Kingdom. I mean, for the benefit of those people that are not close to the community, perhaps you would like to explain briefly, I mean, what anti-Semitism is and how it actually is demonstrated in the community, in society, in the UK. For those, as I said, perhaps are not familiar with the scale or the type of problem that the community are facing.
Well, we increasingly tend to talk about hatred of Jews, racism against Jews as something, perhaps as a better way of getting across what anti-Semitism is. And it is worth reflecting. And in fact, the Board of Deputies, we're the representative body of the UK's Jewish community, and of which there are about 300,000 Jews, so numerically not a lot. And we span, I should say, everything from, you know, those who are secular all the way through to strictly Orthodox, and everybody in the middle. And it doesn't matter how people express or don't express their Judaism. The Board of Deputies seeks to represent what is the community's view, which is both a challenge and a strength when you've got so much diversity. And we've been in existence since 1760. So let me tell you, hatred of Jews, racism against Jews is probably one of the world's oldest, sadly, traditions. It's never really gone away, but what it's done is found new forms. So it's no longer a fringe issue in Britain, but sadly became front and centre because of the way in which it found a form in politics, and specifically within Her Majesty's opposition at the time, under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. And it's been a very difficult few years for us professionally and also personally.
Yeah, and it is quite dramatic and striking when you use that specific example, that it's found a modern way of affecting the Jewish community, namely through politics. And as you say, the nature and no doubt the scope of the hatred against Jews is shocking to many of us when you explain it in that way. I mean, do you think, given it's now more a priority for everyone to tackle anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, as you put it, are things actually now getting better, both in the, as you say, the opposition party under its new leadership, but in society generally? I mean, have we seen progress in the last 12 months as we're now all working together to try and rid ourselves of the scourge of anti-Semitism?
I think it's patchy progress. Okay. The other area of finding new forms, of course, is social media, which is rife with hatred of Jews. Conspiracy theories are very big on social media, and there are all sorts of ills in the world, including coronavirus, for which Jews are apparently responsible. And we've had to do a lot of work with social media companies who have been somewhat slow, I'm sorry to say, in action. And as a representative body of the Jewish community and working with our international partners, we have sought to pressure them. But it is, you know, I find it quite shocking that that people can post and outrageous things that are incitement, in my view, and yet the social media companies do nothing. And I'll give you one example. We had somebody talking about the Board of Deputies and saying that the right thing to do was to bomb the Board of Deputies. I mean, if that's not something to be concerned about, could we get that taken down, closed down? No, not for some while. And it's like, what do you have to do?
Sure.
And I'm only telling you something that's repeatable. A lot of the stuff we see is absolutely not repeatable.
As I say, I think people that are not close to the community or don't follow these matters on social media, I think will be shocked by what you're saying, because I'm sure it's not an odd occurrence, as you're saying. It's a pretty common occurrence, particularly in social media. And these are people out there in society in the United Kingdom, who presumably are holding down regular jobs and have families and friends who are spouting off this anti-Semitic rhetoric on social media. It is appalling.
And I think if we link it with the point you raised, Mark, about the Jewish hatred, the anti-Semitism that we saw under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. I mean, probably the most stark place you could see the two things coming together, social media and the political aspect, was in respect of a number of the Jewish women Labour MPs. Yeah. Now, if anyone thought it was a fabrication, then they only had to look at the abuse they got on Twitter and Facebook. And indeed, to the point where some people were imprisoned for death threats, rape threats against those Labour Jewish women MPs. Yeah. That tells you all you need to know. But you did mention about, the times now. It's worth saying that within 48 hours of Keir Starmer being elected leader of the Labour Party, we were meeting him along with other representatives of the Jewish community, and we've had another meeting since. He's absolutely clear about the work he has to do and his leadership team to restore confidence between the Jewish community and the Labour Party, which had completely broken down. I have been in all the meetings that we've had with members of his shadow cabinet. In every single one of them, they, like him, have repeated a heartfelt apology. And the most important thing for us, see, words are important, but actually it's the actions that matter. Sure. And that's where the test comes. Yeah. And we will continue to keep the pressure on. However, we have seen actions that we never would have seen under Jeremy Corbyn. In fact, we didn't see people who had committed anti-Semitic acts within the Labour Party were their disciplinary cases had not been dealt with. Keir has prioritised putting that right, and people are being disciplined, removed from party membership, just to name one thing. And I think that all those statements that he's made, backed up by action, of what will, if he continues to do that, will continue to rebuild the relationship, which was so deeply fractured. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there is progress, but as you say, maybe you need to see more action to ensure this problem is addressed, but also the pressure is obviously maintained both in the UK and elsewhere. We'll probably come back to that, Gillian, if we may. But turning to the other challenge that your community are facing, as it is everyone, the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, I think the Jewish community has been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. I mean, do you want to explain why that is the case, and how your community, a very diverse community, there's a faith element there, of course, but also a secular element, how it's perhaps come together in these very, very difficult times, probably using social media like we are now, to try and address the pandemic challenge?
I think the first thing I say is it's been very challenging for the Jewish community in the UK, not least because the number of deaths in our community are out of proportion to our numbers. In other words, they're higher as you look at what proportion we are of the population. Now, why is that? Difficult to put a finger exactly on it, except to say, I mean, not exclusively, but a number of Jews live in urban areas. There's an older age profile. There also was, we called it the Purim spike, which is, Purim is a festival that happened earlier in the year. Probably, I would say, I'd locate the time, it was before we were thinking or were advised about what to do. Purim involves a lot of socialising and being together. And Judaism is when practiced, is a very social, as well as sort of of course it's religious too, but the two things come together at a festival. So you've got a lot of people in close proximity, and there was a spike which you could take back to that timing. So it's been very difficult. We've lost some very key people. Every death is a sadness, of course. And the other impact on our community, not just us, I'm sure, but of course, what a challenge to the very fabric of a community, which is, as I said, based on being together, based on families being together, communities being together, and not being able to. And synagogues, of course, like other places of worship, not being open. Now, depending on where you are, I mean, if you're what one might call more of a progressive Jew, then a number of communities have used Zoom and live streaming to great effect for access to services. But for the more orthodox, that is not permitted on religious days.
Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, there has been an embrace where, wherever it can be used, of different ways of working. And I think actually there's been some benefits. People have been able to join communities who probably couldn't.
Sure.
Synagogues are opening up, some are not. We have, of course, we're heading towards Jewish New Year, Yom Kippur. As you'll know, these are big times for communities to be together, and some will not be. So I do actually think we've had to be very creative, and we've responded well. And the other area is charities, organisations, including our own, all under financial pressure.
Yeah.
And I know that's not exclusive to the Jewish community, but our charities, us as a representative body, organisations like Jewish Care, who look after older people, whole range of organisations, Community Security Trust, who do our security. Everybody is feeling the pinch and having to respond. So I think it's a reshaping of our community, and probably won't go backwards, which is similar to, I'm sure you find the same at work, Mark.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all
in new ways.
We're all in the same challenging position, but I think it's interesting to hear how it's particularly impacted upon the Jewish community, because by virtue of your need to socialise, as you say, for maybe faith reasons, but other reasons, culturally, how it's particularly affected you. And it sounds to me, Julie, as if that situation is not going to, as you say, go back to what it was like before anytime soon, if indeed ever. And I guess the community has to come to terms with that. These may be long-term changes that we have to adapt to.
And we have, we've also obviously, we want to keep people safe. We want to keep people well.
Yeah.
So again, we have, as a community organisation, also encouraged that. And also volunteering. People have really, within the limits they could. I myself became a telephone befriender for an older gentleman and I think I probably get as much out of having a chat with him each week as he does chatting to me. But it made me want to do something, and telephone befriending was the thing I could do under all the restrictions. So I do that for the Jewish Care Charity, and I enjoy it very much.
Yeah.
So I'm not the only one that has done more volunteering.
Sure. And I guess another important aspect of your work that's been affected by the pandemic is your outreach, your educational outreach, to try and raise the level of understanding about the Jewish community, about your history, your culture, your religion, but also more perhaps challenging issues like Zionism and Israel. I mean, how have you tried to address that growing demand in society for knowledge, information, and above all, you mentioned earlier about fake news, about facts on these issues? How have you been able to square that circle, trying to get over facts at a time of a pandemic?
Well, in some ways, being able to do that virtually has given us a whole new possibility. I mean, we started something open to anyone in the community called Bodcasts, as in Board of Deputies casts, on different subjects, where we've had them, and we've never been able to do this before, because we never thought about doing it using sort of platforms like this. And so we did one where we brought together 4 members from the Haredim, who are the strictly Orthodox, to sort of speak and to answer questions about how, as that part of the community, they work, the challenges, their views. We've never done that before, so that was a wonderful groundbreaking moment. And we started our podcast series by dealing with anti-Black racism, because that was so timely.
Cool. And
we'll continue to find new ways of extending debate, discussion, understanding, and in that respect, we're harnessing the new possibilities. And that's another reason I don't think we'll ever go back, because that ability to talk to a wide range of people has been phenomenal.
Yeah. And on that subject of anti-Black racism, Gillian, you mentioned, I mean, I think it's deeply affected all of us, watching those terrible scenes that we've all probably seen on social media, and all perhaps reflecting on how we all have to change to try and confront racism in all its forms. Is that something that's also a focus for you and your work in the coming year?
Very much so. We were all shocked, were we not? As you say, and challenged, and rightly. And we felt at the Board of Deputies that we needed to make a response, and our community needed to make a response. And so what the Board of Deputies did was set up, again, never been done before, Commission on Racial Inclusivity in the Jewish Community. And we have Black Jews. So the question is, how are Black Jews feeling about being part of the communities? No one's ever asked before. And I'm very glad that we have chairing it Stephen Bush from the New Statesman. And I listened to an interview with Stephen, and he said he was so honoured when we asked him to chair the commission. And he wondered if he was Blackish enough and Jewish enough to do it. And he said, whether I am or I'm not, he said, I'm honoured to do it. This is such an important piece of work. And I really respect him for that. And it's challenging. We're asking questions that nobody ever asked. And we are listening in a way that no one's ever listened before. I think that's the role of the representative body of the Jewish community. And I'm deeply proud that we're doing that at the Board of Deputies.
Well, it sounds like, Gillian, you've got a lot of challenges ahead. It's going to be a tough, but hopefully a year of opportunities too, as you say, to learn more from each other. Hopefully you'll be able to join us again, maybe in a few months' time, to report back on how you're confronting those challenges. But in the meantime, Gillian Merron, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, and take care.
Thank you.